Hey, supply chain folks, how are you? Rob Wolf here. And I did a video similar to this a couple years ago, and I thought, you know what, let me kick it up a notch. I've got a couple items I go into a little deeper dive with, but I also give some stuff in the supply chain field that maybe you don't know, and it might be educational for you. So, first, I'm guessing you're in the supply chain profession at the managerial level, maybe looking to get a higher level position or director's level. Now, if you're at the early stage of your career or a supervisor, this may not be apropos to you, but stick around because you'll learn some stuff to advance your career. And speaking of your career, hopefully you've got a bachelor's degree or something of that nature, and you're continuing to learn. Okay, you can check my link profile. I've got lots of certifications and what have you, APICS certifications. I'm green and black belt certified, but I've got to be honest, and I'm not getting paid by this school. But the gold standard to me is Georgia College and State University. Okay, I got there. I graduated a couple years ago. Still have some great friends that I met, classmates there. So if you're looking for a master's program in supply chain, go ahead and look them up, Georgia College and State University. In fact, I'll put a link down that you could check them out. Okay, so let's get into the weeds here. So you've got the interview, you pass the HR person or the gatekeeper, so to say, and you're going to be talking to someone in the operations field. Could be your hiring manager or somebody else. I think this goes without saying, but do some homework on the company. And I don't mean just about the company. Make sure you know who the players are, especially if it's a big company. Who is the vice president of supply chain? Or they could have an operations, like a chief financial officer or a chief supply chain officer, I should say. Make sure you know their names. And I have not had this happen to me, but I have heard that the interviewer will ask the person being interviewed, what can you tell us about our CEO? Okay, so make sure you know that name as well. Okay, second one is, and I mentioned this before, labor. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the labor in the warehouse distribution center that will be reporting to you. You're probably going to have hourly labor, some leads, some supervisors, and other managers. Again, do your homework on your area. What is a general warehouseman getting paid in that area? What is a supervisor getting paid? And ask them the scale. And honestly, over my years of doing this, the cheap companies end up the people are revolving and they don't stick around, whereas the companies that pay people, they make it a career. I love telling this story. I'll digress a little bit, but when I was at Reynolds Consumer Products, great company in central Illinois. Now, Red has been retired for about 10 years. Okay, he started with the company 2 months to the day after President Kennedy was assassinated. And he finally retired. I think it was about 2012, 2013. No, it was 2015, 52 years. Anyway, so check that out. And also, not only hourly wage, check out if they have temps. I am not a fan of temp labor. It's a cheap way out. Now, it does have its place with seasonal jobs. But aside from that, to me, just me, that's a red flag if more than 10% of your workforce is temp labor. Okay. Ask them, why is the position open? Now, most of the time, it's going to be that someone left the company or there's been a promotion, but keep your ears open for that response. I had one company I interviewed with, and they said it's newly created. I was going to be the warehouse manager and purchasing manager. And this was a $300+ million company. And I thought, a warehouse manager? Newly created? So just keep your eye open for that response. And just ask what if there was a promotion or what have you. Maybe you could talk to that person. Ask the question. I would think they wouldn't be too upset if you wanted to talk to them. Okay. Describe the culture here. How would someone fit well with this culture? And what I'm getting at when I ask that question is this a silo mentality that everyone has their own little yard and they don't integrate together, ask them, do you have weekly meetings, monthly meetings with the other managers? I can tell you, again, I'm not a big fan of meetings, don't get me wrong, but if you don't have that socialization, personalization with the other managers and supervisors, you're not going to build a good team. And I mean the entire company team. Okay. So ask those questions about meetings and what have you, getting together. And obviously find out, is this a sales and marketing driven company and there's not a lot of value placed on the supply chain manager? So that's what you're trying to getting at there. Ask them, not only why you're there, what are the big challenges? What are the big rocks that's going to make someone like me successful in this company? And again, keep your radar up when you hear this answer, because they might be talking about a day in the life. And if they aren't, ask them, what are people doing in this role that I would be looking after? And I just had a conversation, last week, as a matter of fact, with a hospital. They're looking for a supply chain manager. And they were describing that the person going to get the supplies for the operating room, they weren't validating what they were taking out of the cabinet. They were barcoding everything they took, but they didn't hit a button to confirm everything. And I asked, well, who does that person report to? Does it report to someone in the supply chain? Then you can make them accountable for that. They said, no. That person reports to the surgical department, nobody in the supply chain. So I said, I said this to myself, that's problem number one. You've got to have people accountable for what they're doing in the operations. But I've got a lean background. So I mentioned, well, that button, can you make it an audible tone? Not an obnoxious one, but ding, ding, ding. So they know, I got to hit it. Or a light, strobe light. So I gave them an idea so that they know, okay, I'm thinking as we go along. So you might get lucky enough as they're talking about that you could just interject a thought to them to show your expertise in supply chain. Okay. And accountability, I'll talk about that a little bit later in the process. So KPIs, describe your KPIs. Don't ask them, do you have KPIs? But describe your KPIs. And honestly, don't be surprised if they say we don't have any. There's a lot of companies that don't. And that frustrates me as a supply chain manager. You can't improve what you don't measure. So you have to start somewhere. So I'm going to change screens here with you. And I'm going to show you a very good tool that I got from Logistics Bureau. And I'll put the link to them as well in the comment section. But here are KPI targets. Logistics Bureau, they are consultants in Australia. And if you want to get on their website and get emails sent to you, it's very good, very educational. They post videos every week. So anyway, here's the worst in class for metrics, and here's average, and here's the best in class. Okay, so they've got some productivity measures there and some safety there. So what I always like to do when it comes to KPIs, I like having a safety-oriented one, a quality, and a productivity. Okay, and make sure that the people that are performing this, the folks on the floor, they understand these KPIs. Okay, the worst thing in the world is a KPI that they have no control over, and more importantly, they don't care. Okay, maybe you can, down the road when you get on board with this company, incorporate the KPIs into a quarterly bonus with the hourly people. So, keep those in mind. And I'll put a link to this KPI spreadsheet I just showed up in the comment section. Another one, don't have too many KPIs. I think 3 to 5 is good. It's manageable. It's, easy to understand. I've heard, I've never seen this, but I've heard some companies have 8, 9, 10 KPIs. Now that may be okay for the manager, but for the visual, for the folks in the trenches, I think 3 to 5 is good. And then follow that up with, what's your mission statement? again, you're probably going to hear crickets, but you can Google, mission statements. And again, tie this mission statement in with the KPIs. Now, the company may have a mission statement, to be an environment friendly and to take care of our customers, whatever it may be. Well, what does that mean to the guys in the supply chain field? Okay, so make your own department mission statement. And again, make sure that they, like I said, that they relate to it, they understand it, they buy into it. In fact, you might even be able to have them suggest, a mission statement that you all can agree upon. Okay. Ask them if you can talk to the employees. Now, at this point, you're probably 3 or 4 interviews into it, but maybe they could give you a couple of your colleagues or peers, their names and phone numbers. You could talk to them and get a feel from them. While you're at the facility, and I'll tell another story here, ask to make a tour of the facility, the entire facility. Okay. I interviewed with a company. They gave me a tour of the facility where I interviewed, and I thought, oh, okay, this is good. Nice, clean place. Well, unfortunately, the hornet's nest was over at the other building that I didn't get a tour of. So that's what I walked into. So make sure you get a tour of all the entire place, but also as you're walking around, keep your radar up. Look in the corners, look up high. How is the product? How is everything organized? A clean house is an efficient house. Okay. Look at the employees. Look at their body language. Are they looking at you smiling and waving, or are they kind of in a I'm here for a job mode? So keep your radar up for that. Another one that's near and dear to my heart, inventory. I'm going to change screens again. And what I'm going to do, and I'm not expecting you to be a CPA, but I think it's important at the managerial level to understand what inventory can do for an organization. Now, I always said there's 3 things that'll kill your organization: freight, labor, and inventory. If you've got way too much inventory, it's going to create chaos. Okay. And what I always like to teach people is bring that inventory down. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't cover this topic and not mention my website, that I do have a website, costtoserve.net, that helps companies to show them what their inventory is not profitable by each item, and then which items are profitable but not as much as they think, and they can adjust their business accordingly. But let me show you. It's a very generic income statement of a company. And I want to show you the power of what reducing the inventory is. So on the left-hand side, you've got variable expenses and inventory. Inventory is an asset. Okay, so keep that in mind, that when we're reducing the inventory, we are reducing our assets. So in this example, let's say we've got 300 units of inventory, or $300, 300,000, whatever you want to call it. You look at your asset turnover, you're turning it over 2.2 times and a month or a year, whatever it may be, and your return on assets is 11%. If you can go in there, find the waste of your inventory and bring that down 50 units, I think that's about 15%, if my math is right, 16.6 to be exact. Look what happened. The asset turnover went up. You're turning, your assets quicker. Okay. So that's the power of reducing the inventory. Now, variable expense, that kind of goes with the business. If you're a manufacturing company and you're producing more, you're going to be using more labor. Okay. But on the inventory side, you're going to be bringing in more raw materials. Okay. And then you may need bigger space or more equipment to handle more inventory. Okay. You see how they tie in. So the other thing I want to talk about is down here. Let's go back to the $300 of inventory, or $1 million, whatever you want to call it. There's a thing in organizations called asset to liabilities, debt to equity ratios. you want to have your assets be twice as much as liabilities, or liabilities half of the assets. Okay, so it's kind of like when you and I shop for a home. Okay, I'm a mortgage loan officer as well. And so what we look at is debt to income. Okay, you're bringing in X amount per month. How much debt are you carrying to afford this mortgage? Okay, and we don't want to go over a certain percentage. It's the same thing in the business world, and the investors look at this stuff. So the general guideline, and this is a very general guideline, they want that ratio, they meaning companies, about half, 50%. Okay, so your assets need to be 2 and your liabilities 1. That's 50%. If it gets above 50%, then people are thinking, hey, you're carrying too much debt. You got too much liability. Okay, now there are companies that have 30%, some 60%, but keep that in mind, because what would happen is, let's say right now we're at 50% and you come in there and you're a champ and you say, you know what, I'm going to reduce $50,000, 50 million, whatever it may be on the inventory. Look what happens. Oops, I did the variable expense. Sorry about that. Let me go to the inventory here. See that? It went up to 53%. My point being is, when you're reducing your inventory, you've got to work with your accountant, your controller, okay, to make sure that you don't bring that ratio too high. So what you'll do is, while they're making a profit this month, okay, let's skim some of the slow, obsolete material. Okay, I'll give another example of, and this is a horrific example. A company I work for, this is classic business 101. They needed to save some money. So the plant manager says to all the managers, including me, we need $150,000 savings out of your budget for next year. So I said, okay, plant manager, I call him. I said, we've got $3.2 million of inventory that's down the road in that building. We've got $15 million total of inventory, but that 3.2 is 3 years plus worth of inventory. Most of the products that we have a 2-year shelf life. We're literally paying to store obsolete material. I said the carrying cost of 20% means we're spending $640,000 a year just to hold this. I said, we've got to get rid of the inventory. Now, he said that's a conversation for a later day. I don't know this, but it could be that because they weren't making a big enough profit, they couldn't write that off the books. Unfortunately, that falls on the supply chain because we suffered from it. Okay, so hopefully that income statement was good for you, and I'll put that in the link below that you can use for educational purposes. The other one is a little near and dear to my heart because I got to be honest, I get frustrated with this topic. Technology. I am amazed that we are almost a quarter century into the 21st century, and there are companies that don't have a warehouse management system, that don't have barcoding, and A, don't have any plans of upgrading, and B, they're still wanting to stick with what they have, but hire us to fix the problem. Okay, so make sure ask the company what software are you using for your warehouse management system. Okay, if they don't have it, that is your choice whether to pursue this any further. Okay, now if this is a very small company, there might be some wiggle room there. Now, if they are saying that they will have the funding available to get a warehouse management system, okay, again, you're taking a risk. They don't have it yet. They're telling you that they're going to give you the funding. So keep an ear to the ground on that. I'll tell you a story. I spoke to a company, went to the facility, and they had problems with their inventory. Most of you watching this video were not even born yet of the software that this company was using. AS400 from IBM. Look it up. It's the green computer, letters on a computer screen. And I said, what version are you using? I think they had 5 versions of AS400. They didn't know. Long story short, you could not locate the inventory or create locations in the computer system. So they had no plans of upgrading. And I told them, I can't help you. And no one else will be able to help you because you're relying on one person to keep track of the inventory. And it's just the eyeball method. So anyway, I kind of went off a tangent there, but make sure that they've got the technology, because let's look at it this way. For those that are basketball fans from the 80s and 90s, such as myself, Michael Jordan didn't win championships until he got a team around him. Okay? Great players need great people around them. They need the tools. Okay? Supply chain managers need the technology, okay, to perform their job well. Okay, so hopefully these give you some good ideas of what to ask for in an interview. And you could Google other stuff about questions, but these were more, I wanted to tailor these to supply chain. So at this point, let's say the interview wraps up, definitely ask them, what are our next steps? Assuming you're still interested, and tell them you're interested in taking the next steps. Once the interview closes, be sure to give them a thank you card. A card. Write down, thank you very much for the interview. Mail it to them, okay? You can do the email and you can do a text. That's the easy way out, okay? I'm old-fashioned. I believe in a handwritten note, okay? So make sure you do that, and you progress further in the interview process. Again, I hope this video was helpful, informative, and even if you aren't interviewing for a position, maybe some of the things I showed you were helpful. And last but not least, to all my friends and classmates at Georgia College and the future classmates and graduates at Georgia College, I wish you well. Hope this was great. And if you have any questions, concerns, again, just hit me up. I'd be more than happy to help out and answer any questions. Take care, folks.